My guest tonight led his team on the field and in the process helped create one of the most renowned dynasties in the history of the NFL. After being drafted by the Dallas Cowboys as the #1 pick in 1989, Troy Kenneth Aikman went from not winning a single game during his rookie season to becoming a Super Bowl MVP just 4 years later. It marked the beginning of an illustrious career that would garner him 6 Pro Bowl selections and 3 Super Bowl titles, making him one of only 4 quarterbacks to ever win 3 or more NFL championships. But before he became the face of America's team, he wore braces on his legs until he was 3 years old. Went from riding bikes in the sunny California breeze to feeding pigs on the family ranch in Henrietta, Oklahoma, and was almost drafted in 1984 by the New York Mets. Tonight, we learn what makes this undeniable icon who he is. A man who once said, "Things are never as good as you think they are, or ever as bad as you think they are." Please welcome NFL Hall of Fame legend and my co-pilot in the booth for the past 13 years, Troy Aikman. Is this weird? Is this weird for me to sit across from you and talk to you about what makes Troy Aikman who Troy Aikman is?
Well, you know, I mean, like you said, this is what, our 13th year or 14th year together, and yeah, a little weird. I feel like you know me pretty well, but you said a few things I didn't know you did know about.
You've been through a lot of obviously great moments in your life and some really life-changing, life-shaping experiences, especially as a kid. The whole club feet, I was not aware of that you dealt with that as a really young boy.
Yeah, I was, and I really have no recollection of it myself, so I was, I guess, fortunate in that sense. But yeah, I was born with club feet, and fortunately for me, my parents got on it, early. And then when
You were a fat little baby,
little fatty, yeah. Yeah. But a doctor who, and I don't recall his name. My mom should be sitting with a chair right here. She could fill in all the gaps.
Right.
She's just that way. But
let's bring her out.
Yeah,
come on out.
Yeah, come on out. This is your life. But it was a football player, All-American at Stanford, that went on to medical school, and he's the one who did the surgery on my feet and went through a few years of casts and braces and all that. And I've never had any issues whatsoever with my feet, but yeah, I was born clubfoot.
Were you a smoker as a 2-year-old?
Which you'll hear me clear my throat some as we move through the night, and it started at that early stages of smoking pipes.
Shut up! Did you must have grabbed somebody?
My dad was a pipe smoker, and my dad was really a modern-day Wyatt Earp. I grew up in California, Cerritos, California, and my dad would show up to my practices or games, and he would have cowboy hat and boots, and have his pipe, and people just don't dress like that typically on the West Coast. So I stole that one from him.
There's nothing like the picture of a kid in a diaper with a pipe. You mentioned your dad. I know that you consider him one of the toughest, strongest, physically tough guys you've ever met in your life, and you've been around him your whole life.
Yeah, he's about 200 pounds. He's 6'3", but he really instilled the fear of God in me when I was growing up. I mean, just a very tough, hard-nosed individual, and he treated me like I was a grown man from the time that I was 6 years old. It's just the way that it was. And he's mellowed as he's gotten older, but he was tough, and the standards were high. And it didn't matter how young you were. I could go through a long list of stories of what I was asked to do at a very young age, and if you didn't get it right, there was consequences to that.
Any one story stand out?
He came home one night and a banana peel was left on the counter. So he called 3 kids down and wanted to know who left the banana peel on the counter, and it was my oldest sister. And it seemed like whenever there was anything that happened, it was my oldest sister that kind of done it. So she had left this banana peel on the counter, and he said the next time someone leaves a banana peel on the counter, they're going to eat this banana peel. Well, about 2 or 3 weeks later, she left a banana peel on the counter, and she ate it. Yeah, he made her eat it. So, like my dad and so many other people's fathers, there was a lot of pressure, especially in those times. I think as someone who had an 8th grade education, he was asked to quit school by his dad to work on the farm. And so what he was able to do with a limited education, and we were middle class, didn't have a lot, but we never went without. So I'm proud of him. I think he's a real example for a lot of people in being able to make the best of what you're given.
Your mom, a breast cancer survivor. I know she showed you a strength there and continues to this day that I would imagine is deeper than anything you could show or you have shown.
Yeah, my mom, I'm a mama's boy, and she's a biggest, huge sports fan. Grew up, when I was growing up, she would watch the Rams, Angels, and Lakers were the 3 teams that that she would watch. And so I'd walk in, she would have the official scoring book, and she would watch the Angels and keep the official score. That was my mom. She knew all the players, and so it was great. For a guy like me who was so athletic and played, all these sports, my dad wasn't that way. My dad wasn't as knowledgeable about sports, but my mom certainly was, and to be able to sit there and talk to her was really awesome. So, she's been there every step of the way, and yeah, she had a real scare in '97 with breast cancer, and was really a miracle. Should not have survived. She did, and she's still with us today, and still a huge influence in my life.
What'd you want to be when you were a kid?
My father, he would ask me from the time that I was 6 years old, 7 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I don't recall ever answering it with anything other than I want to be a professional athlete. It's all I ever wanted to be. Everything that I did was with that in mind, to be a professional athlete. And I was one of the fortunate ones. I've been one of the fortunate ones that I had a dream, and I've been able to live that dream. And not many get to do that.
Why did you move to Oklahoma? What was the draw?
God, if you get the answer to that one, would you let me know?
You don't know why you moved?
Well, yeah, I do. So early on, my father grew up in Iowa. And so he, I think, always kind of, longed to get back to the Midwest and the rat race of California at the time. And he was under a lot of stress. And so from the time I was in 1st grade, he talked about us moving to Oklahoma. And it just went on every year. We were going to move, but we didn't. And then finally, going into 8th grade, we made the move. And we built our own house. My dad, and he hired 2 carpenters. And we built the house. I was shingling the house. I was helping rock the house, and all this stuff at 12. And then we was hauling hay, and we had to get it in before the rains came in, and so we would be out there, and I'm 9th grade, 10th grade, and we'd be out there all night, and until 4 or 5 in the morning to get it in, and so there's a lot that came with that, but it was a great experience for me to be in a small town where values really mean something, and your word means something, and everyone knows what people are doing, and a lot of who I am and what I believe and the values I have came from those years in Oklahoma.
Football comes into your life. I read, and I'm couching this because I don't know that it's true, that it was your dad that kind of wanted to see the football side of you, or is that something that you wanted to do on your own?
Yeah, my favorite sport was baseball. I think had we have stayed in California, I think that's the route I would have gone. And then when we moved to Oklahoma, I had decided my first year that I was not going to play football, that I was just going to play baseball and basketball. And my dad pulled up. I knew they were signing up that summer, that day, for football, and he pulled in, and he said, "Hey," he says, "you know, they're signing up for football down in town." He says, "You want to sign up, right?" And I didn't have it in me to tell him no. I just didn't. And I said, yeah, I want to sign up. But I always wonder, had he not have pulled in that day, I wouldn't have played.
Wow. But you guys were not that great at Henrietta before you stepped under center, right?
Right. They changed the divisions when we were going into my junior year, and there was a 4-team division. So you only had then 3 division games. And we started off the year 0-7, right? We're 0-7. And now we're going into the divisional games. We lose the first divisional game. Now we're 0-8. And we've got 2 games left. And we win the last 2 games. So we finished second in our division, and they took the first and second place teams and
at 2-8.
Got to go to state. So we were 2-8, and the problem was that it was one of the worst teams in Henrietta history, but it was also the first time they'd made state in like 20 years. So our chant was 2-8 going to state, and we thought, we really thought we were peaking at the right time. You know what I mean? They say you want to be playing your best football when you go into the postseason. Well, we were on a 2-game win streak. And, but sadly, the story ends, as you might imagine. We got smoked the first round of the playoffs, so we finished our year 2-9.
Let's talk about you go to college and you're in Oklahoma. Jimmy Johnson took a run at you at Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah, in fact, I'd committed to Jimmy. So Jimmy started recruiting me when I was about 15 years old, and then I was 17 when I graduated from high school, and he really wanted me. I was their #1 choice on the board, and I went to OSU and took my recruiting trip, and I told him, I said, I'm coming to Oklahoma State. It's where I want to be, and it really was. I told him, I said, but I want to go to the final recruiting weekend at Oklahoma. I mean, I'd heard so much about it. They bring in all the Heisman Trophy winners. I mean, it's just a great weekend. I said, I just want to experience that. And he tried to talk me out of it, but I went. And so I decided to go to OU. And that was hard for me to tell Jimmy that. But when I got to Oklahoma, really within the first week of my freshman year and throwing with these other quarterbacks, I mean, I knew that I could play quarterback at the collegiate level.
You have been drafted by the New York Mets?
Yeah.
I never knew that about you. The Mets were talking to you about legitimately being a top pick.
Yeah, they were looking at me when I was in high school, and they kept asking me. I'd already signed with Oklahoma to play quarterback, and they kept asking me what it would take to leave, not go to OU, and then sign with them right out of high school. And my parents had always said, hey, you're going to go to college. But what I really wanted was to be able to say, 30 years later, like right now, that I actually got drafted by the Mets, right? So I was trying to hold them off, and they called me up the night before the draft. They said, look, we have to know how much it's going to take to sign you, because we're not going to waste a pick on you, and then you go to Oklahoma and play quarterback. And so I just threw out a number. I just said, it's, $200,000. I'm 17 years old. And I'm just talking to this guy. I got no representation. I got no agent. You're just picking a number? Picking a number out of the hat. I mean, I didn't even know. I didn't even know what $200,000 was. And but it sounded good. And I said $200,000. And the guy on the other line, Darryl Strawberry was their best player at the time. And he's like, $200,000? Says, hell, Darryl Strawberry doesn't even make $200,000. And I said, well, if you want me, you're going to pay $200,000. And he said, have a great career at Oklahoma. He hung up the phone. That was the end of it.
You're in Oklahoma. You're stuck in an offense that doesn't throw the ball. The option, for those of you who don't know, that's the stuff we've seen some of come back into the NFL with You fake it, you hold it, you flip it. That's not what your skill set was.
Well, it wasn't me. I was 6'4", I'm white, I'm slow, you know, it's just, I had nothing going on for myself at the time. You know, my first start was against Kansas as a freshman. And so Kansas had this linebacker. He was all-American. His name was Willie Pless. And what they would do was they would take the dive. You know, it didn't take long to figure this thing out. You know, I mean, it's a triple option. So, you know, I'm reading this guy. They would take the dive guy, and now I pull it, and I'm running down the line. Well, that guy would always take the pitch man. So then that means the quarterback has to take the ball. So here I am running straight up and down at 6'4", and Willie Pless came off the edge every snap and just killed me in the ribs every single snap, and that's what it was. I mean, that became every defense's approach, and it just wasn't it wasn't for me. So I went in and met with the offensive coordinator, Jim Donnan, who went on to be the head coach at Georgia. I said, you know, I'm gonna leave, and he says, well, we need to go down and tell Barry, and I said, okay, and so I went down to Barry's office and said, hey, Coach, I've given this some thought. So I'm in there, and I said, hey, this just isn't working out, and I need to go. I want to go somewhere where I can take advantage of my skills. And, you know, you'd like to have at least the coach maybe say, well, let's reconsider this. You know, yeah, you're a real talent. We'd hate to lose you, right? I mean, but then, you know, he said, hey, okay, where do you want to go? You know, he pulls out this drawer. He pulls out this drawer, and he says, all right, let's go through the top passing schools in the country. We got Iowa, we got Miami, you know, UCLA. They throw the ball, and so he was not trying to keep me from going. I think Barry. I really believe that he felt when he was recruiting me that they were going to throw the ball. I really believe he thought that's what they were going to do. And it didn't work out that way, and I do think he felt bad about it. He and I have never really had this conversation, but I do think he felt bad. So when I went in and said, Coach, you know, I need to go somewhere else, he knew that. But what happened was, there's Jimmy again. Jimmy was the head coach at Miami, so now he's recruiting me again at Miami. I mean, I can't shake this guy. So I'd just taken my UCLA recruiting trip. I'm all set then to go on my recruiting trip the next week to Miami. But I decided I don't need to go to Miami. I've already made up my mind. I'm going to UCLA. Jimmy calls me up and says, hey, we got your trip all planned. You know, you come in and, you know, here's what you'll do. And I said, Coach, I'm sorry, but I said, I'm going to UCLA. And he was not happy about it, you know. So now he had struck out twice, right?
And you get with Terry Donahue, who I know was a big piece of your life in your younger years.
Yeah, he is someone that has had a major impact on me and my career, but more importantly, me. You know, just the kind of guy he is. He's just the people who I've tended to gravitate to the most have been, you know, not so much the most talented people or not so much the greatest coaches, even though he was, but the people who I really respect, you know, who represent themselves in a way that I just really respect, and no one does it better than this guy right here.
Did you have fun in college? Did you go to the parties? Did you drink beer? Did you? I mean, I know you was such a driven guy, such a precise guy. Did you allow yourself to have fun at UCLA?
Yeah, I did. You know, I didn't drink in high school. Didn't drink at Oklahoma. And
what the hell's happening here, by the way?
I think I was drinking there. That's at the Hula Bowl with my two college roommates at UCLA. But when I got to UCLA, I had to redshirt. I had to sit out a year. And so I got time on my hands. I'm not playing, and, you know, running around with a bunch of guys who have time on their hands and they're not playing. And going into the spring then of the first year that I'm at UCLA, those two guys in particular and some other offensive linemen of mine were in SAE, the fraternity. So I decided that I was going to go into the, you know, fraternity. And when the start of spring football began, and that's when I was going to earn the job, that was also the commencement of Hell Week at SAE, right? So, you know, the first night I'm up at 4 in the morning, I'm scrubbing floors and going through that.
You're thinking you're back home in Cerritos.
Yeah. I'm being called a maggot and everything else. You know, I mean, they're screaming at you and throwing water on you.
I can't imagine you putting up with that.
And the guys going in with me, they're younger. You know, they're 2 years younger than me, and I dealt with it. And then one night at the Hell Week, I got into a fist fight with what felt like the whole house. I mean, it was about 5 guys that I got into it with, and 5 guys got on me. And I still have a scar on my nose from it, but I got busted up pretty good. And they rubbed my face in the rug, so I got rug burns on my nose. My nose is busted, and you know, eyes aren't looking too good. And I had to go to practice the next day. And I show up at practice, and you know, not feeling particularly well anyway, and then looking even worse. And I just remember the look Coach Donahue gave me. You know, he gave me this look like, you know, what are you doing? You know, and who are you? And I've never been that kind of guy anyway, but it really it affected me, and I quit the house, and I got locked in on practices, and that was kind of, you know, I still had a great time, had a lot of fun when I was in college, but I got really focused on why I was there.
And that's really where it began, and that takes you through this great run. I mean, 20-4 at UCLA, you win 2 bowl games, you have the success. And now here you go.
So now I'm trying to decide on an agent. When I was coming out of college, I'm in Oklahoma City having these meetings with agents. And in the middle of the meetings with the agents, it's announced that the Cowboys have sold. They had already told me, I mean, I was pretty certain I was going to be drafted by them. They had told me that I would be, but they said, yeah. I said, well, who's buying the team? And he said, it's some oil tycoon in Arkansas, and he's going to hire Jimmy Johnson as his head coach. I said, Jimmy Johnson? And so now I wanted to come to Dallas. I wanted to go to Dallas, and now I'm thinking, man, I hope he doesn't have any bad feelings about me. You know, I've turned him down twice. I hope he doesn't turn me down now. And so he was the head coach. So I'm drafted. I'm excited, you know. I knew Jimmy. He's excited. Jerry was great. He's always excited, you know. So when you get drafted #1 overall, you want to come out of that, and you want to feel like you were a good player. You know, you don't want to be regarded as a bust. So we go into New Orleans. Our first game of the season is at New Orleans, and we get just throttled. I mean, we lose 28-0. We couldn't do anything. Couldn't get out of our way. They killed us. Couldn't move the ball. Couldn't stop. We lose 28-0. The next week, we're playing at Atlanta. Jimmy calls the team up on Saturday's walkthrough. We go through the walkthrough. Jimmy pulls the team up, and he tells us, we're 0-1. We just started the year. We're 0-1. Jimmy says, hey, let me tell you guys something. This losing shit is over. It is over. You know, tomorrow, we're going out, and we're going to whip their ass, you know. Well, little did he know, that winning shit was far from over. You know, we'd lose 14 more times before that year was over. So that was the year we were 1-15.
That's great.
Yeah.
How do you plow through that? How do you mentally get your wits about you and get ready for 1990?
I mean, now it's kind of, all right, you got to start doing something. And quite honestly, the second year through the first 12 weeks of the season were really harder than my rookie year, because then I really felt urgency. I felt like we needed to do something. I was tough. I was tough on my teammates. I was tough. I wasn't interested in being anyone's friend. I had great friends. I'm not saying that, but that, and maybe it came from my dad. You know, I mean, my job as I saw it was to win. And so when we hit the practice field, if guys didn't know what to do, if we'd have receivers that didn't know how to line up and what routes to run,
you were pissed off.
I was incensed, and they knew it. And I'd tell them.
Were you a face mask grabber?
I wasn't a face mask grabber, but I was confrontational. You know, I mean, I was not afraid of confrontation, and I wasn't worried about whether I was a great leader or not. I was just hell-bent on holding everybody responsible to doing their job. And I would walk off the field and I'd just say, man, what do you got to do to win a game in this league?
Yeah, and I would imagine the motivation is kind of hard to find because it's a team game. the record really is on you. Nobody says the center went 0-11 in his rookie year. Nobody cares.
Right.
They look at you, the #1 overall pick.
It was miserable. I mean, it was absolutely miserable. It was worse than anything I went through as a rookie. Jimmy and I weren't speaking. You know, just everything. I was actually wanting to be traded. I had meetings with my agent and said, I just can't do this. And then we went out to Los Angeles and we played the Rams. And they were a really good team. And out of nowhere, we win the game. And then we got on a 4-game win streak. And so we ended up finishing that season 7-9 and feeling, you know, actually pretty good about ourselves. But
tell me, when you meet Norv, who's a receivers coach for the Rams.
Yeah.
And here he comes in 1991.
Right.
What does a great offensive coordinator do for a quarterback? What did Norv specifically do for you?
He just, it sounds simple, but he took what everyone does best and he had them do what they do best. You know, I didn't throw this particular corner route particularly well. Jim Everett with the Rams did, and they threw a lot of them. And I just couldn't, I never got comfortable with that throw. And we didn't throw it. We just said, forget it. You know, and what I did throw well, we threw the dig routes well, you know, the 20-yard in routes. We threw the comebacks. And that's what I did. And Irvin ran those well. You know, that's what he did. He wasn't going to just blow by people all the time. So we didn't ask him to do it. And Emmett wasn't a guy who was going to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. He was going to catch swing passes and that type of thing. And that's what we did with him. And so it sounds really simple, but for some reason, most offensive coordinators don't go about it that way. And it worked for us. And we all, you know, when they talk about the triplets, me, Michael, and Emmett, credit Norv for our successes. And you know, he was the right guy at the right place at the right time, and he got us really where we wanted to go.
Maybe it's good to go through this quote right now. Things are never as good as you think they are, or ever as bad as you think they are. What does that quote mean to you?
I got it from Terry Donahue when I was at UCLA. It's something that he said to the team all the time, and it resonated with me because it's so true. You know, I mean, when you think life is really, really good, you know, and then something happens, you realize that it really, you know, wasn't as good, or it wasn't as good as you thought it might have been. And then when things are really, really bad, it's typically not as bad as you think. So, you know, I think good moments are fleeting, bad moments are fleeting. I think constantly things are in a state of change. And so I've always tried to remember that as good as it is, I try to appreciate it and enjoy it, but know that it's not going to last long, and the same way with difficult times.
So it turns around. You guys get to the playoffs in '91. You're hurt part of that year. Burline's a part of that, a big part of that, at quarterback. But now '92.
There was a belief for me that I knew I just am too determined to accomplish, and I knew that we would win a Super Bowl at some point in my career. I really did. Little did I know it would happen as soon as it did. But
let's roll a video of what you guys did in '92.
2 away. Super Bowl champions. Dallas 52, Buffalo 17. And the team now is this. You got to start talking already. Dynasty Dallas, the 90s.
What a feeling that must have been.
After that pass, I'm going over the sidelines, and the guys on our sideline that we were 1-15 3 years earlier. We were the doormat of the NFL. We were the worst team in the league. You know, people were laughing at us. And 3 years later, here we are on the sidelines, and we're the world champs. And to see the exuberance and the excitement and the happiness and the smiles and the celebration that was taking place, and with a number of guys that were told that we would never win as long as they were playing on our team. So it was a really, really great moment. And that honestly is what, you know, I know the plays, I remember all the plays, but that picture of when I was going off the field and seeing that, that's really, that embodies what winning that Super Bowl meant.
Can you describe to this audience here, or those watching at home, what Jimmy Johnson was as a head coach? Because I think now You see Jimmy Johnson on TV. You and I laugh about it in the booth when we're watching the pregame show on Fox, and he's got a dog bowl and a dog collar, and he's laughing and he's joking around. He was as hard-nosed and hard-assed a coach as you could find. You can't get any worse than him.
He was. He was really, really tough, and he had his way of doing things, and that's the way it was going to be. He would cut guys. I think he was, Jimmy was a psychology major at Arkansas, and he really believed and believes that he can, like almost that he's the puppeteer, that he can make people do what he wants them to do. And I think he does have a great way about him in terms of how to hit people's buttons and how to motivate them. And so I've been around a lot of coaches, a lot of good coaches. And what Jimmy's strength was as a coach, I think, was that there would be a safety, for instance, that was a good player, not a great player, but a good player. And Jimmy in a team meeting would say, hey, so-and-so, you're the best safety I've ever seen. You're better than anybody I've ever coached, And this week you're going to be lined up against so-and-so, and you're going to whip his butt. You're going to cover. And that guy, I would watch it. This guy who would just kind of going through the motions, all of a sudden, you know what? We'd go out to practice. He's got his chest out. He's feeling good about himself, And Jimmy's philosophy was always coach the player to be what you want him to be, and not what he is. And it really is a good philosophy in life. Treat people or encourage people to what you want them to be instead of maybe, keeping them where they are. And I thought he was really, really great at that.
Because now you guys are world champions. How do you keep the motivation? Do you sense that any of that is starting to deteriorate, the will to win?
Well, things were different. You definitely sense that. You go in then to the start of the year and you realize you're a good team, right? You're a good team. But yeah, there's guys who are in contracts that think they were the reason, not that they weren't, but everyone then is elevated in terms of what they feel their value or what their worth was. It becomes hard. It becomes hard for every team then to keep those guys. And we lost, over the years, we lost a lot of guys. But, people ask me, hey, how come so few teams win back-to-back Super Bowls? And I always say, because it's so hard to win one. It's just hard to win. It's hard to win the first one, And so to try to do it again, it's just, it's very difficult to do.
Let's watch.
Smith, touchdown.
This is where Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones are going to be dangerous together. These guys like coming to the Super Bowl. They want to continue this run.
30-13 Dallas. The Dallas dynasty is real.
You win in '92, you win in '93. Nobody's won 3 Super Bowls in a row, and all of a sudden Jimmy Johnson's gone. I know that you will forever, for the rest of your life, think what could have been if Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones could have coexisted.
Yeah, I think I think they were, they were young, they were brash, they were confident guys, and I think both of them thought that they could do it, again, and do it under their terms, and they realized that what they had was something that was really special, and that's hard to get. What we had in that moment, you can spend a lifetime in coaching and as a player and not capture that. But, they didn't know that. And it's a shame. I can tell you with all honesty that there was never any jealousy between Michael, Emmett, me, any of the guys. We all sacrificed. We all gave up something to be good and to win. But the 2 guys leading the organization, they didn't, and they couldn't. And yet they were the ones telling us that's what we needed to do. And so that's the part that really bothers me, and it should never have happened. And I think that, people ask, hey, if Jimmy had stayed, how many more Super Bowls would you have won? And I don't know. Maybe no more, maybe a lot more. I don't know. But what I do know is that we would have been really good for a long time. Because he has such a great eye for talent and he had a great way of preparing a team that we would have been knocking on the door every year, just like New England is. So when people talk about like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, I say Bill Belichick there's no question that he benefits by having a quarterback like Tom Brady, right? But Tom Brady benefits. He's got a head coach that doesn't want to do anything other than coach, and a great one. You know, Jimmy wanted to go fishing. You know, I mean, if Jimmy had wanted to coach and had nothing else in his life like Bill Belichick, I would have been regarded much differently than I am now. And Emmett would have, and Michael, we all would have. We would have been big winners for a lot longer period.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Wow. You don't feel like you're regarded?
No, I feel that within the game of football that I'm highly respected. And that's all I ever wanted. But had Jimmy have stayed, you know, those numbers that maybe they say, you know, not that big a deal, would have looked differently. You know, whether that means, okay, well, instead of 3, you maybe won 5, or instead of 4 NFC championships, you were in 7. You know, whatever it might have been, I don't know. But I know that we would have won at a much more consistent rate than we did after he left.
Shortly after dealing with Jimmy Johnson leaving, I know you were going through something else that was difficult for you and your family. The Oklahoma City bombing. Your sister was a nurse at St. Anthony Hospital there?
Yeah.
What a picture like this, and then the devastation that created, and your sister being there front and center, what does that picture bring back for you?
That's hard because you know, it was in Oklahoma, you know, where I'd spent, you know, my formative years, and I think the difficult part, or why it's emotional for me, is because my sister, she was a nurse there at the hospital at St. Anthony's, and she witnessed, you know, the people who were coming in off the streets, and they were rushing in, and they didn't have enough beds to, you know, get these people to, and I visited Oklahoma City. Jerry took a bus, we flew, and we went and visited them, and what came of that, a lot like, I guess, you know, what we witnessed on 9/11 was just the courage of the human spirit, you know, and these people whose lives were turned upside down in a matter of moments, and yet the ones that I visited were, it was amazing how positive and how upbeat they were, and they weren't, you know, they weren't angry, and you know, and it was really remarkable. And my sister, after the bombing, my sister now she's the CEO of St. Anthony's. She now runs the entire hospital. And when we went back and had a charity softball game to raise money for the victims, and Roy Firestone was there, and he wanted to sit down and do an interview with me, and he wanted to do an interview with my sister. So I sat down, I asked my sister Tammy, hey, you okay with this? They want to talk about the benefit and what we're doing and your experiences of having been so up close there on the front lines. And she said, yeah, she was okay with it. So I spoke, and you know, I guess the emotion for me comes from having been with the victims, but also just seeing her. She couldn't talk that day. She didn't do the interview. She tried to, and I've tried to talk to her about it, and she just can't. So, you know, the heroes, the people that we refer to as heroes, and you know, football players or athletes, actors, whatever, you know, the heroes are the ones in moments of crisis that really, you know, put it on the line. So.
So now with Jimmy Johnson out, your next coach is Barry Switzer, who you left at Oklahoma, and 2 years later, you win your 3rd Super Bowl with. but all hell's kind of breaking loose. I mean, that's what we as outsiders, as fans, see with the stuff with Irvin and the White House and all the other stuff that was going on. That was crazy. I mean, it was like a Hollywood script.
Yeah, as far as the White House goes, I didn't know anything about that until it came out publicly. I mean, so that was.
But the average fan would go, "Oh, bullshit."
Yeah, I know.
Knew all about it.
I know. I really did not. But it was just really just another example of how loose things had gotten. There was no attention to practice. There was no attention to showing up on time for meetings. And, if you practiced, great. And if you didn't, okay. And then you just go out and you struggle and you ask yourself why. I mean, it's obvious why. Being respected for what I did was important. And you want to have a great career for the organization that drafted you. And that happened early, and we won. And then all of a sudden we're on the tail end, and things beyond my control were keeping us from winning. And I was not a guy you wanted to be around. It was really, really hard. And so to go through that at the end was a real disappointment to me. And the reason that I retired was because I said I spent too much time trying to build up some credibility and respect for my career, and I'm pissing it away, and I have nothing to, and I have no say in it. And I'm not going to be a part of that. And that's what I said to Jerry. So when I left the Cowboys, I thought I might play elsewhere, but it didn't happen. But I was never going to play for the Cowboys again.
Does it feel good to know that you spent the entire career with Dallas?
Yeah. I look back on it, and I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did. And I didn't play. I didn't play elsewhere. It feels like it was the right thing to do, and I had an opportunity. Ed Gorin, who's here tonight, he called me up and said, "Hey, if you retire, we have an opportunity for you with Fox." Matt Millen had just signed to be the general manager with the Detroit Lions, and so I was weighing that. I said, do I want to go out and play another year, risk having another terrible season, and or do I want to just say, okay, I'm going to retire as a Cowboy, be done with it, and then move on? And I got a great opportunity to move into the #2 booth, and that's what I decided to do.
Talk about concussions and why you don't want to be the spokesperson for concussions.
Well, I don't want to be because I'm healthy, I'm fine, I hope that continues, but I haven't had any issues whatsoever, with it. I feel like I had 2 really severe head injuries. First one that I had, the first big one I had was my rookie year against the Arizona Cardinals. I got knocked out cold for 10 minutes. Don't remember the pass or what took place, and had blood coming from my ear for a week after the game, and I never missed the following game until my last season after any head injury. So that was the first really significant one. Had no head injuries in college or in high school. And then the really most severe one was the NFC Championship game in '93, which I still have no recollection of even having played in that game. And I got knocked out in the third quarter. So I have amnesia from that game. I spent the night in the hospital. Knowing how severe that one was, yeah, you kind of wonder, gosh, I mean, what all took place and what's the collateral damage moving forward. But I haven't had any issues. I think the job that we do helps confirm, in my opinion, when you're able to recall numbers and names and have to do it pretty quickly. Maybe that helps, I don't know, but it certainly reminds me that, okay, you're doing okay. Even though I occasionally call Randall Cobb Reggie Cobb.
Shut up. You're a moron for that, by the way. You put that in your head before we do a game.
I know. But so, anyway, whenever they want to talk about head injury, it's me and Steve Young. And Steve retired because
he's doing okay too.
He's doing great. He's doing great. So yeah, I get asked to do these interviews and talk. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want people saying head injury Troy, head injury Steve, or whatever. I'm good, and I see guys. I know there's a lot of guys who aren't. A lot of former teammates of mine aren't doing well, and I don't want anybody being the poster boy for head injury, but it's certainly not me, at least at 48 years old. And so I have not done really many interviews. Most of the time I don't even talk about it, if anybody even brings it up.
I appreciate you talking about it tonight. I sense, and you and I really haven't talked about it much, but when UCLA retired your number and you got a chance to go back and be honored that way, that was fine. But getting to do it right there, and that almost makes me cry, seeing your girls there, understanding what Dad meant to these Bruin fans, and what a day that must have been for you.
I think for UCLA to, for them to retire my jersey, that meant a ton. But you know, my girls, they still don't quite, you know, they know the jersey got retired. They weren't, you know, I had my kids after my career ended. So they didn't never see me play, but they hear about it. They're, you know, and they're aware of it now more because I broadcast, and their friends say, "Oh yeah, he was quarterback," and you know, so for them to be there, it was special. And I'm just trying to, you know, like you and like everyone else who has kids, just trying to influence the girls in the most positive of ways. And you know, there was a summer a few years ago where I didn't feel like my girls were getting out and exercising enough. And so I took it upon myself to say, okay, we're going to go on a walk. Every day we're going to go on a walk in the summer. We're going to walk, and it was probably about a 3-mile walk. And we're walking one day, and I don't know, I was in one of those moods where I just was kind of, you know, frustrated and, you know, crabby. And
God, I see that every friggin' weekend of my life.
So my oldest, you know, I'm having these, and you haven't done this, and you haven't cleaned this, and, you know, whatever. And then I got on, the oldest plays lacrosse, and the coaches are constantly saying, hey, you got to throw the ball up against the wall 100 times. I said, yeah. I said, your coach has been telling you to practice on the wall. I said, I haven't seen you do it once. I mean, I haven't seen it once. And as I'm walking, you just feel like there's no one walking but alongside you anymore. So I'm walking, and I stopped, I turn around, and they had stopped. You know, they're like 10 yards behind me, and you know, she's got her head down, and I go walking back there, and I said, what's the deal? And she says, Dad, you know, I don't want to disappoint you, but she says, I just got to tell you, I'm not going to be a professional athlete. And, you know, I said, darling, there's no doubt in my mind that you're not going to be a professional athlete. Right? But I said, you're going to be something. You're going to be something. I mean, I don't know what it is, but you're going to be something in life. You're going to, you know, you're going to go to college. You're going to be a nurse. You're going to be, you know, you're going to, whatever. You're going to be something, and I'm just telling you, it doesn't just happen. And whatever you're going to do, you know, do you want to be good at it? Do you want to be great at it? You just want to kind of go through the motions, you know? And I said, I would think you would want to be great at whatever it is you do. And I'm just telling you that if you're going to be really good and great, you got to put in the time. And that's, you know, and so there's those lessons. And, you know, I don't know, raising kids has been, you know, the hardest thing I've ever done. It's been the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I don't know if I'm getting through to them. I mean, I'll find out in a few years, you know.
They're great girls.
They are.
They're great girls,
kids.
And you should really, of all the things we've talked about here tonight, I can tell you, as your friend, you should be really proud of the father that you are.
Thank you.
Do you look back, any regrets, and anything in your career that that you didn't get done?
No, I really don't. The one thing that I was told by, I've mentioned his name now a few times in this, since I've been out here, is Norv Turner. Right, so I'm out there and I'm playing, and I throw 2 interceptions, 3 interceptions, we lose the game, and Norv, on Monday morning, I'd go in there and he'd say, you know, he says, sometimes we have to take a step back and realize that these are the jobs we always dreamed of having. You know, sometimes you need somebody to be able to remind you that, you know, you're doing something that you always wanted to do, and I got to do that. And I said it earlier, but not a lot get to do that. Not many people get to do that. So I really don't have any regrets. There's situations and moments in my life, like everyone, that I wish I'd handled differently. But I'm one of the lucky guys on the face of the earth that's really been able to do everything that I'd ever hoped I'd be able to do. and it's been a lot of fun, you know.
As we wind down, what's next for you?
You know, my youngest is in 7th grade, so she'll be graduating here in 5 years. You know, it'll free me up to maybe get into some other stuff. I have always kind of thought that maybe I would go into the football side of things. And
talking about being in a front office.
Yeah. But, you know, if someone said, how long are you going to broadcast? I don't know. I think if that's the road I'm taking, I'd say, you know, 10 more years or something.
Long enough to win an Emmy, for God's sake.
If I win one, yeah, I may not come back.
Oh, come on.
I'll go out a winner. But yeah, what I don't see myself, I don't see myself growing old in front of a TV, you know, or on TV. I don't see that. I'll move on to other things.
Let's both make that pact right now to each other. This is how we end it. You don't know this, you're a fresh audience. This is how we end it. 5 fun questions that I have not written. I want you to remember that part. You got that part? I've not written this?
Got it.
I've not seen them.
I'm assuming I'm answering the questions.
Yes. Would you rather look like a baby for the rest of your life or talk like a baby for the rest of your life?
I would rather look like a baby.
But talk like Troy Aikman as a 48-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we can flash back that picture of you in a diaper with a pipe. There he is. Out of that mouth comes, I want to tell you about winning, kids. Would you rather lose $10,000 or lose all of your phone contacts?
That's not a fair public question.
The 10 grand. You don't care about the 10 grand?
Yeah, I do, but I'd rather have my phone contacts.
Okay. Would you rather eat poison ivy or eat a handful of live bees?
I'd eat poison ivy. Who came up with these questions?
Would you rather never have coffee again or live without TV forever? That's a good question. You just mow coffee. You dominate a coffee pot.
I like coffee in the morning, but I'm not a big coffee drinker. I could give up coffee. Yeah. I could give up coffee.
Would you rather have shoe horns for hands or bed springs for feet?
You know, I guess I'd go, what, bed springs for feet? Huh?
You could have run the wishbone with bed springs for feet.
Yeah. I wouldn't be here doing this interview, I guess, if that had happened.
No. I guess by way of closing this out, I would say thank you. It's fun and a little bit intimidating to interview a good friend, and I thank you for your honesty and your openness.
Thank you. This guy is one of the greatest guys that I've had the pleasure of getting to know. Immensely talented. Gets tired of me saying that. And
No.
And
Not at all.
And an amazing dad in his own right. He's been a great example for me in that regard. And hey, thank all of you. It's been a long night. Appreciate y'all coming.
Troy Aikman, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Off we go. Thank you, guys.